I, 17 male, am fed up with my entitled sister and my mom who always sides with her. Every special occasion has been ruined by them. When I turned 16, I had one simple wish: to celebrate my sweet 16 at an amusement park with a few friends. I had been planning it for weeks, counting down the days and imagining all the fun we would have. I even saved up some of my own money to buy snacks, souvenirs, and maybe even one of those overpriced photos they take of you mid-scream on a roller coaster. For once, I wanted a day that was just about me. But of course, nothing in my life is ever that simple. My mom decided that my younger sister had to come along even though I begged her not to bring her. She'll behave, my mom promised, but I knew better. My sister behaving in public was as rare as snow in the summer. Still, I tried to stay optimistic. Maybe this time would be different. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The chaos started before we even left the driveway. As soon as we got in the car, my sister began her usual routine of complaining. She didn't like the music I had picked out for the trip, said her seatbelt was too tight, and whined that she didn't want to sit in the back seat. My mom immediately snapped at me to switch seats with her. So there I was, crammed into the back seat like an afterthought, while my sister stretched out in the front seat as if it was her birthday, not mine. I could feel my frustration simmering, but I bit my tongue. After all, the day had barely started. When we finally got to the park, I thought things might improve. Maybe the excitement of the rides and the atmosphere would distract her. But no. She refused to go on any of the rides that my friends and I wanted to try. Every time we got in line, she either cried about how the ride was too scary or whined that it was boring. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, told me to compromise and let my sister pick a few rides. What that really meant was wasting nearly an hour on kiddie rides that none of us wanted to go on. Imagine 4 teenagers squeezed into a pastel teacup spinning slowly while toddlers laughed and waved at their parents. Yeah, not exactly the sweet 16 vibe I had envisioned. Finally, we got to the roller coaster I had been looking forward to for weeks. I was practically vibrating with excitement as we approached the line. But then, as if on cue, my sister threw one of her signature tantrums. She screamed about how she was scared and didn't want to be left alone. My mom, who apparently has the patience of a saint only when it comes to my sister, made me skip the ride to stay with her. I watched my friends climb into the coaster cars without me, their faces filled with excitement while mine burned with frustration. Then came lunch, which was another nightmare. I wanted pizza, my sister wanted burgers. My mom, predictably, sided with her, saying it was easier to just get burgers and avoid another meltdown. While we were eating, my sister managed to knock over her drink, soaking her clothes in the process. Cue the waterworks. My mom immediately turned to me and snapped, "Why didn't you help her sooner?" As if I was some kind of personal assistant responsible for every little crisis. To top it off, she made me give my sister my jacket, so I spent the rest of the day freezing while my sister pranced around in dry clothes like the queen of the amusement park. The rest of the day was more of the same, whining, complaining, and tantrums on repeat. My friends tried to hide their annoyance, but I could see it in their forced smiles and the way they whispered to each other when my sister wasn't looking. I felt humiliated. This was supposed to be my day, but it had turned into yet another episode of my sister gets whatever she wants. By mid-afternoon, my mom decided we should leave early because my sister was too tired to keep going. I could barely look my friends in the eye as we trudged back to the car. They had come to celebrate with me, and instead I had dragged them into a disaster. And the worst part? This wasn't even the first time my sister had ruined a special day for me. There was my 14th birthday party, the family trip to the beach last summer, and countless other moments that were supposed to be mine but ended up revolving around her. Honestly, it is too exhausting to even write about all of it. Now I am just counting down the days until I can leave this house and never look back. Maybe one day I will finally have a moment that is mine and mine alone. Until then, I guess I will just keep dreaming. Update 1. My little sister ruined another important event. It's been just over a week since my disastrous Sweet 16, and guess what? My little sister has managed to ruin another significant event. At this point, I'm starting to think she has a sixth sense for knowing exactly when to throw a tantrum that puts everything and everyone on edge. This time it was during a family gathering. My aunt had organized a small dinner to celebrate my cousin's recent engagement. It was supposed to be a joyous, intimate evening, a rare chance for our family to sit together, share some laughs, and enjoy good food. My cousin had even brought her fiancé to meet everyone for the first time. Naturally, I was excited to escape the chaos of everyday life and have a somewhat normal night. Silly me for hoping. From the moment we walked through the door, my sister was on a mission to make the evening about herself. She immediately started sulking because my aunt's dog wouldn't sit still long enough for her to take a picture. Then she loudly complained that there weren't enough kid-friendly options on the dinner table, even though there was plenty of food she could eat. My mom, of course, jumped in to soothe her, reminding her, and everyone else, how sensitive she is and how we need to be patient with her. Meanwhile, the rest of us awkwardly tried to ignore the commotion and keep the conversation flowing. But the breaking point came during the toasts. My cousin stood up to thank everyone for coming and share a sweet story about how her fiancé proposed. It was a lovely moment, at least until my sister interrupted. Out of nowhere, she started crying about how nobody ever does anything special for her, and how it wasn't fair that my cousin got all the attention. Everyone froze, unsure of how to react. My cousin, bless her, tried to brush it off with a laugh, but it was clear the mood had shifted. My mom, instead of addressing my sister's behavior, turned to me and said, "Why don't you take her outside to calm down?" As if it was my job to manage her meltdown. I refused, which led to a tense, whispered argument right there at the table. My sister's crying only got louder, and eventually my mom decided to take her home early, leaving the rest of us to pick up the emotional pieces of what should have been a special evening. Later that night, as I lay in bed, replaying the whole disaster, I couldn't shake the thought, why does my mom always excuse her behavior? Why does she expect everyone else to bend over backward to accommodate her, no matter how inappropriate or selfish she's being? I'm not gonna lie, I'm running out of patience. I love my family, but I'm starting to feel like a side character in my own life. My sister gets away with everything, and I'm the one who has to step aside and deal with the fallout. It's exhausting. I've tried to stay quiet and keep the peace for so long, but I'm reaching my breaking point. I've started seriously considering sitting down with my mom for a real talk. Not just another passive-aggressive comment or frustrated sigh, but an honest, no-holds-barred conversation about her blatant favoritism and how it's affecting not just me, but the entire family. The problem is, I don't know if I have the courage to follow through. My mom has always been quick to defend my sister, and I can already hear the excuses she'll make. She's just a kid, or she doesn't mean it, or you need to be more understanding. But when does understanding turn into enabling? When is enough finally enough? If I don't say something soon, I'm afraid I'll keep bottling it up until I explode. And that won't help anyone. But at the same time, I'm scared of rocking the boat too much. What if my mom doesn't listen? What if it just makes things worse? I've been reading through the comments on my last post, and so many of you have shared your own stories of dealing with favoritism and difficult siblings. It's been oddly comforting to know I'm not alone in this, but it's also made me realize that I need to stand up for myself. I can't keep waiting for things to magically change. So here's the big question. How do I approach this conversation without it turning into another argument? And what do I do if my mom refuses to see my side of things? I want to be heard, but I'm not sure if that's even possible. Let me know your thoughts. Have you ever been in a similar situation? How did you handle it? For now, I'm trying to muster the courage to take the first step, but honestly, I'm terrified of what comes next. Update 2. The conversation with my mom did not go as expected. So, I finally did it. I sat down with my mom and had the serious conversation I have been avoiding for years. After everything that happened at my birthday and the family gathering, I knew I could not keep quiet any longer. My sister's behavior has been out of control for too long, and my mom's endless excuses were wearing me down. I went into the conversation hopeful but nervous, hoping she would finally hear me out and understand my perspective. Spoiler, it did not exactly go that way, and I waited until my sister was out of the house so there would not be any interruptions. I approached my mom calmly, but I did not sugarcoat anything. I told her how my sister's constant tantrums and demands were not just ruining my experiences, but were also affecting everyone around us. I brought up specific examples, my birthday, the family dinner, and explained how her behavior made me feel like I was always taking a back seat, that my feelings and needs were always second to keeping my sister happy. I tried to be as honest and direct as possible, even though I felt my hands shaking the entire time. At first, my mom just listened. She looked surprised, almost like she had not realized how much this was bothering me. For a moment, I thought, maybe this is gonna work. Maybe she will finally understand. But then she started speaking and everything went downhill. She admitted that my sister is difficult. She said things like, "You have to understand, raising her has not been easy, and she has always been more sensitive than you." She acknowledged that my sister's behavior can be disruptive, But then she quickly pivoted to defending her. She talked about how my sister has struggled to fit in, how she is still young, and how I need to be more patient because it is harder for her to manage her emotions. The worst part? She actually said, "You are the older sibling, so you need to set an example." I could not believe it. I am supposed to set an example for someone who throws tantrums at 13 like a toddler? For someone who seems to get away with everything because she cannot help it? It felt like she was putting all the responsibility on me, as if I am the one who needs to change instead of my sister. I pushed back, telling her that it is not fair to expect me to keep sacrificing my happiness for my sister's outbursts. I said that enabling her behavior is not helping anyone, least of all my sister, who will never learn to take accountability if she is always shielded from the consequences of her actions. My mom got defensive and said, "I am doing my best. Parenting is hard. You will understand one day." The conversation went in circles after that. She admitted that she might have been too lenient with my sister, but then she followed it up with more excuses. She is just going through a phase, she said. She will grow out of it. When I asked her what would happen if my sister does not grow out of it, she said, "We will deal with it when the time comes." I could feel my frustration bubbling over, but I held it together. I asked her directly, "Do you think it is fair that everyone else has to walk on eggshells around her? Do you think it is fair that I feel like I cannot even enjoy my own birthday without it turning into a disaster?" She sighed and said, "I know it is not fair, but I do not know what else to do." In the end, she promised to try harder. She said she would talk to my sister about her behavior and set firmer boundaries. She even said she would consider taking her to therapy if things did not improve. But honestly, it felt like an empty promise. I have heard "I will try harder" before, and nothing ever changes. My mom seems so afraid of upsetting my sister that I doubt she will ever follow through. And even if she does, I am not sure it will make a difference. After the conversation, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that I had finally spoken up, frustration that it did not go the way I had hoped, and a deep sense of disappointment. I wanted my mom to see things from my perspective, to validate my feelings and take real action. Instead, it felt like she was just trying to placate me without actually committing to change. So now I am left wondering, was it worth it? Should I have pushed harder? Or was this the best I could expect? Part of me wants to believe that my mom will follow through on her promises, but another part of me feels like I need to start preparing for the possibility that she will not. If she does not, what then? How do I keep navigating this dynamic without losing my mind? I am not sure where to go from here, but one thing is clear. I cannot keep living like this forever. I just hope that this conversation was the first step towards something better, even if it does not feel that way right now. What would you do in my situation? Have you ever had a conversation like this with a parent? And did it lead to real change? Or was it just more of the same? I would love to hear your thoughts because right now, I feel completely stuck. Update 3. It has been a month since my original post, and surprise, surprise, my sister struck again. At this point, it feels like she has made it her personal mission to hijack any moment that is not about her. But this time, things went differently. This time, I decided I was done letting her run the show. The incident happened during a weekend outing I had planned with my friends. We were going to grab dinner at this trendy new burger place and then catch a late-night movie. I had been looking forward to it all week. I did not even tell my mom about it until the last minute because I wanted to avoid any drama. Of course, the moment I mentioned my plans, she dropped the bombshell. "You need to take your sister with you." I immediately pushed back, reminding her that this was supposed to be my time with my friends. But my mom was adamant. "She feels left out," she said. "You know how much she looks up to you." The irony of that statement would have been laughable if it was not so infuriating. How does throwing tantrums and sabotaging my plans equal looking up to me? I refused at first. I stood there staring my mom down, telling her that my sister has no interest in hanging out with my friends and that forcing her to come would ruin the evening for everyone. My mom would not budge. She went into full guilt trip mode, saying things like, "Do you know how hard it is for her to make friends? And why are you being so selfish?" Eventually, my sister overheard the argument, and true to form, she started crying. At that point, I knew my mom was not going to back down, so I caved. Against my better judgment, I told her she could come. I should have trusted my instincts. From the moment we left the house, my sister was in rare form. She whined about the music in the car, complained that the restaurant was too loud, and spent half the meal sulking because she did not like the menu. My friends tried to be polite, but I could tell they were annoyed. When we got to the movie theater, I thought things might calm down. Big mistake. The movie we had chosen was a horror film, something we had all been excited to see. My sister, of course, decided she was too scared to watch it. She started crying, again, and demanded that we leave. My friends looked at me expectantly, waiting to see what I would do, and that was the moment I snapped. For the first time, I told her no. I told her she could sit in the lobby with her phone or wait in the car, but I was not going to leave. She stared at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. Then, predictably, she started wailing. My mom called me in the middle of her tantrum, demanding to know what was going on. I calmly explained the situation and told her I was staying to watch the movie. My mom flipped out, accusing me of being cruel and inconsiderate, but for once, I did not back down. I told her, I have spent my entire life bending over backward to make her happy, and it is never enough. Tonight is about me and my friends. I am not leaving. She yelled at me for a while, saying things like, "You are supposed to be the bigger person," and "How could you embarrass your sister like this?" But I stood firm. I told her that if she was so concerned, she could come pick my sister up herself. My sister sulked in the lobby for the rest of the movie. When we got home, my mom was waiting for me, furious. She accused me of abandoning my sister and making her feel unwanted. I told her plain and simple that I was tired of sacrificing my happiness to cater to my sister's demands. I said that if she wanted to keep enabling her behavior, that was her choice, but I was done playing along. The conversation escalated into a full-blown argument. My mom kept repeating the same excuses. She is just a kid. You do not understand how hard it is for her. And my personal favorite, you are her role model. I countered every point, telling her that shielding my sister from consequences is not helping her grow, and that constantly prioritizing her over everyone else is unfair to the rest of us. Eventually, my mom stopped yelling and just looked at me. I could see she was furious, but there was something else, maybe frustration or even guilt. She finally said, "I will talk to her about it tomorrow," and left the room. It was not exactly the victory I had hoped for, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had stood up for myself. As for my sister, she has been giving me the silent treatment since that night. Honestly, it has been kind of nice. My mom is still clearly upset, and I am sure this is not the end of the drama, but I feel like I finally took a step toward reclaiming some control over my life. Now, the big question is, will this actually lead to change, or is this just the beginning of an even bigger battle? I do not know, but I am ready to find out. For the first time, I feel like I am standing on my own 2 feet, and it feels pretty damn goo. Update 4. 2 months ago, I felt completely trapped, stuck in a cycle of catering to my sister's every whim and dealing with my mom's endless excuses for her behavior. But after standing up for myself during that movie night fiasco, something clicked. I realized that if I wanted things to change, I could not wait for my mom or sister to magically see the light. I had to be the one to draw the line. So, I started setting boundaries. Real ones. And honestly, it has been life-changing. The first boundary I set was saying no to being my sister's unofficial babysitter. For as long as I can remember, my mom has treated me like my sister's built-in caretaker. Going to the mall? Take your sister. Hanging out with friends? Bring your sister. Staying home? Watch your sister. It was relentless. After that night at the movies, I told my mom flat out that I was done. I told her that if she wanted someone to watch my sister, she could hire a babysitter or do it herself. Predictably, she did not take it well. At first, she accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. She brought up all the time she had sacrificed for me, as if that somehow justified my sister monopolizing my life. But I held firm. I told her that I deserved to have a life of my own, and that constantly being forced to cater to my sister's needs was unfair. It was not an easy conversation, but I refused to back down. The second boundary was refusing to attend family events where I knew I would be forced into the same old dynamic. A few weeks after the movie incident, my mom invited me to a family barbecue. I asked her point blank if my sister would be attending, and if so, whether she had spoken to her about her behavior. My mom brushed me off, saying, "You know how she is, just try to be patient." That was all I needed to hear. I told her I would not be coming. When she realized I was serious, she was furious. She accused me of tearing the family apart and said I was letting a child control me. But for the first time, I did not let her guilt trips get to me. I told her I was not going to put myself in situations where I knew I would be disrespected or treated unfairly. If she wanted me at family events, she needed to make sure my boundaries were respected. At first, everyone in my family seemed to think I was just going through a phase. My mom kept calling me, trying to convince me to change my mind. My sister predictably played the victim, crying about how I was being mean and did not want to spend time with her. Even some of my extended family members chimed in, telling me I was being too harsh and needed to let it go. But I stayed firm. I knew that if I caved even once, all my progress would be undone. Over time, though, something surprising happened. My mom started to adjust. I think she realized I was not bluffing, and that if she wanted to have a relationship with me, she would have to respect my boundaries. She stopped trying to force me into taking my sister everywhere, and even started holding her more accountable for her behavior. It was not a dramatic transformation. My mom is still my mom, and my sister is still my sister, but it was a step in the right direction. For example, last week my mom asked if I could help her with something around the house. When I said I was busy, she accepted it without pushing back. A month ago, she would have guilt-tripped me until I gave in. It is a small thing, but it felt huge. As for my sister, she is still adjusting. She does not have the same influence over me that she used to, and I can tell it frustrates her. She still throws tantrums, but they do not affect me as much because I have stopped letting them. The other day, she tried to get me to skip a friend's birthday party to take her to the mall. I told her no, and when she ran to my mom to complain, my mom actually told her to stop bothering me. I could not believe it. Do not get me wrong, things are far from perfect. My mom still has her moments where she tries to push my buttons, and my sister is still, well, my sister. But for the first time in years, I feel like I have some control over my own life. I am not constantly on edge, waiting for the next meltdown or argument. I am starting to feel like I can breathe. That said, I know this is just the beginning. Setting boundaries is one thing, but maintaining them is another. There will definitely be moments where my mom or sister tries to test me, and I will need to stay strong. I am also trying to figure out how to rebuild my relationship with my mom in a healthier way, one that does not involve me constantly giving in to her demands. So where does this leave us? Honestly, I am not sure. I am still figuring it out as I go. But I can tell you this, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I am living for myself instead of for everyone else, and that feels pretty damn good. Update 5. It has been a year since I first shared my story, and I can hardly believe how much has changed. This will be my final update, and honestly, it feels like the closing of a chapter in my life. A messy, frustrating, emotionally draining chapter, but one that taught me more than I ever thought possible about myself and the people around me. First things first, I moved out. After years of feeling trapped and suffocated, I finally have my own space. I got into a university in another city, and while the decision to leave home was not easy, it was absolutely the right one. Living on my own has been an adjustment. Balancing classes, part-time work, and paying bills is not exactly a walk in the park, but the sense of independence has been worth every struggle. For the first time in my life, I can make my own choices without feeling like I am constantly being overshadowed by my sister's tantrums or my mom's guilt trips. I no longer have to tiptoe around the house, wondering when the next argument will erupt or whether my plans will be derailed at the last minute. I can breathe, think, and just exist without the weight of their expectations crushing me. It feels incredible. That is not to say everything is perfect. My relationship with my family is still complicated. My mom and I talk on the phone every week, but the conversations are polite and surface level. She asks how school is going, I ask how things are at home, and we leave it at that. There is still a lot of unresolved tension between us, and while I wish things could be better, I know it will take time, and probably more effort than either of us is ready to put in right now. As for my sister, we barely talk. She sent me a few texts after I left, mostly complaining about how much she misses me and how boring things are without me around to entertain her. I replied politely, but did not engage much. I know that probably sounds cold, but I need this distance. For so long, my life revolved around her needs, her moods, and her drama. I cannot go back to that, even if it means our relationship stays distant for a while, or forever. Moving out has also given me a new perspective on everything I went through. Looking back, I can see how much those experiences shaped me. Not just the bad moments, but also the times I stood up for myself and fought for what I deserved. Setting boundaries with my mom and sister was one of the hardest things I have ever done, but it was also the most empowering. It taught me that I am capable of taking control of my life, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against me. I am not going to lie, there are moments when I feel a pang of guilt. My mom still tries to guilt trip me occasionally, subtly reminding me of how much she has done for me and how lonely my sister is without me around. It stings, but I remind myself that I am not responsible for their happiness. They have to figure that out on their own, just like I have had to figure out mine. If anything, this past year has shown me how resilient I am. I never thought I would have the courage to walk away from the toxic dynamics that defined my life for so long, but here I am. I have built a new routine, made new friends, and started creating a life that feels like it belongs to me. It is not perfect. I still have a lot to learn, And there are days when the weight of everything catches up to me, but it is mine, and that is enough. The big question now is whether the distance will help heal the rift between me and my family. Honestly, I do not know. Part of me hopes that with time, my mom and I can rebuild a healthier relationship, one based on mutual respect instead of guilt and obligation. I hope my sister grows up and learns to manage her emotions without expecting the world to cater to her every whim. But I am also learning to accept that some relationships may never be what I want them to be, and that is okay. For now, I am focused on the future. I have big plans and dreams, and for the first time, I feel like they are within reach. Whether it is excelling in school, pursuing a career I am passionate about, or simply finding joy in the little things, I am determined to keep moving forward. I do not know what the next year will bring, but I am ready for it. To everyone who has followed this journey, thank you for listening and sharing your own stories. It has been comforting to know I am not alone, and your advice has been invaluable. If there is one thing I hope people take away from all this, it is that it is never too late to take control of your life. It will not be easy and it will not happen overnight, but the freedom and peace that come with setting boundaries are worth every difficult moment. Here is to new beginnings and the freedom to live life on our own terms.